G5 Classified, your one-stop shop for all things Group of 5 college football. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Gabe Kuhn and Kyron Samuels. Now, let's talk some G5 football.
Yes, sir. We are out here. Episode 2 of G5 Classified is upon you. Gabe Kuhn here, former Memphis Tiger offensive lineman alongside Kyron Samuels, former Jacksonville State offensive lineman. We have a lot to get to today. I mean, we have a lot of shit to discuss. Week 1 of college football was a little bit wild. We're going to have Barry Odom, head coach at UNLV, a little bit later in the show, hyped up, 20-point win on the road against Houston. But we're also going to get to our winners and losers, all this big game reaction. We have a tweet from Roddy White we have to talk about. But, Kyron, what's happening, brother?
What's happening, man? Eventful weekend of football. I don't think we could have asked for a much better week 1 of action. I think it went about as exciting as we could have hoped for it to go. So excited to dive into it.
Yeah, no, I want to dive in last first. Can we dive in last first? Because this is absolutely nuts to me. Florida State, what in the hell is going on? 0-2 in the ACC, 0-2 overall, and we're not even to week 2. You lose to Georgia Tech by a game-winning field goal. You lose to Boston College in game 1 of Bill O'Brien's era, 28-13, and just got absolutely railroaded. That team is not just average. I think they're below average based on what I've seen. There's not really, I hate to say it, and everybody's going to look at DJU still, and he was terrible last night.
Right.
Or a couple of nights ago. But there's not a redeeming quality, Kai. Like, that's the thing that gets me about that team. They do not have a redeeming position group that makes me think they're going to be able to turn this thing around.
Nope. And, it's a little bit of revisionist history, but I'm going to do it anyway. The defensive line talk going into the season was insane. We had national analysts saying that they were going to be the best defensive line in all of college football. And you just look at it from the last 2 games, over 200 yards of rushing given up both games. They just haven't been able to do much of anything to stop the run. And that's the biggest thing I noticed. But beyond DJU, beyond the offensive line problems, that team is very, very slow, particularly on defense. And that's just not something you used to see in Florida State football.
It's wild. And then their linebackers, I mean, DJ Lundy and some other guy, they make up for being slow sideline to sideline and being blocked easily by also being out of position constantly. It's just like that team. I'm amazed, man. Like and here's the thing, having played for Mike Norvell, like I've seen him work with quarterbacks, right? Never high school guys. He always gets transfers. That's just what he does. But he always finds a way to alleviate some of their shortcomings. He's having a damn hard time doing that with DJ, man. And DJ, I understand he's a, quite frankly, super average quarterback. But at the same time, like, it felt like there would be a way for Mike with the offensive, knowledge he possesses. It felt like there'd be a way to get around it, a way to, play to his strengths. And there's just nothing he can do through 2 games to get that done.
I mean, it's inexplicable, too, when you look at the offensive line. They have one of the more experienced offensive lines in all of college football. You still have Lawrence Toafili at running back. You bring in Roydell Williams, who's experienced from Alabama, a solid football player. You bring in Malik Benson, who, in my opinion, is not a wide receiver 1, but he's the guy that should be able to make some plays for you, right? The way that they haven't been able to just get anything going is just inexplicable, in my opinion. I don't understand. Even from a football perspective, I'm looking at it, stuff's there. But even when DJ does make a good throw, they dropped like 4 or 5 balls last night that they should have caught. Right. Tight end 84, he dropped 2 or 3 balls that should have been.
Where he would have had probably 20 yards of run after catch on a couple of them.
So it just doesn't make any sense, man. And looking at the defense side of the ball, too, I'm just looking at Boston College, right? They held Florida State to 21 yards rushing. They ran for 263 yards, and they kneeled out the last 3 plays, right? Took about a good 15 yards off of their total. And they only had 1 penalty all night with no turnovers. When a team plays like that against you, there's nothing fluky about that. They just kicked your ass for 4 quarters from start to finish, and there was nothing you could do about it.
Well, I don't know about you, but, like, have you ever had that drive? I remember 2014 on the road against Cincinnati, the first year that we won 10 games at Memphis. We finished the year top 25, beat BYU in the Miami Beach Bowl. We went on the road, real cold in Cincinnati, relatively early in the year, right as fall was coming. And they had Gunnar Keel and like all these guys. And, they were supposed to be.
Throwback name.
Throwback name. A 5-star that committed to Indiana and then transferred all over the place. But, like, they were picked to win the conference in the preseason. And we ended up beating the hell out of them that night, just beating the hell out of them. But the fourth quarter comes and we're running 4-minute offense, right? And we run 11 minutes off of the clock and we get to the 2-yard line. And instead of, all of the players rallying around it and saying, oh, let's get this backup running back a touchdown, we kneel on the ball. Because honestly, that's like a display of dominance that no one can quite come back from. That always will linger in the back of that team's mind. They pounded us into the dirt so bad they ran 11 minutes off the clock, kneeled on the ball because they didn't want to score and rub it in anymore.
Yeah, that's almost a bigger fuck you than actually going to do the scoring. Like that's worse. That's worse. So no, I've had that job before. We were a little bit different in our team back in Jacksonville State because we were just beating people left and right. I mean, we were the cream of the crop in the FCS along with North Dakota State and those guys. So we had a lot of mercy drives at the end of games with third stringers. So I've definitely had those drives. But like you said, it really goes to show you the mentality difference. Like they expected to go in there and kick their ass. That wasn't a surprise to them. They didn't go into that game thinking that they were going to compete with those guys. No, they knew they were going to go win that game. And it showed how they played from the start. That first drive, they had a long sustained drive, came back and did it right again. Came back and got a stop on defense. That was a team that believes that they were going to go kick their butts from the beginning. So it was cool to see that from Bill O'Brien. I know, being down here in Alabama, and I've been one of those people at times who've been overly critical of him. But the guy who has his own team, he can get a lot out of a little. That doesn't mean he's still the right guy for those jobs. I mean, he still did a fine job when he was at Alabama, despite some picky games. We can always pick at coaches, right? But overall, that guy has proven he can get a lot from a little in terms of a roster.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, didn't have much of a choice. This was the job he could take. Jeff Hafley left that damn place to go to be a defensive coordinator for Green Bay for the Packers. So this was really the job that just opened up for him last second. He took it, and he's running with it. I saw that it's the first time, I believe, that Boston College in an opener has ever beaten a top 10 team, even though that's to me, that's not even close to the story of last night. Yeah. Like calling that Florida State team a top 10 team is like just utterly ridiculous.
It's almost like 2015 when we went to go play Auburn. They were ranked number 6 in the country, but that was a bad football team. We should have beat that team. It wasn't like we went there and beat Cam Newton. I mean, come on. So
that overhyped ass number 10 ranking they just got. No, we're not. I know that technically you're going to be able to put that in the record books, but that's it. I'd put an asterisk next to that one.
I do want to ask you this, though, before we move on from this. Mike Norvell. You've played with the guy. From everything we hear on the outside, he's going to be a guy that's going to rally the troops. He's going to be a guy that's going to be positive, going to try to find a way. How do you spin this to a football team? If you were Mike Norvell, how do you spin this to Florida State that, hey, we still got 10 ball games to go play?
I don't know how I spin it. I'll say this about Mike. Listen, Mike coached me. I was never on this shitty of a team in my particular conference. We at least knew we could win some damn ball games, and we're going to play close with the good ones. Like this team, they don't have an edge about them. They're relatively soft. They don't have playmakers. Like this is just like, to me, he may say something different to the team, put on a brave face because he needs to. But I know behind closed doors, this is just what they're probably talking about it this way. Like the transfer portal can giveth and it can taketh away, right? Some years you're going to hit. Some years you just miss completely. They whiffed. And I think they're already understanding that. But the way he's going to try to turn it around and say we're going to play more physical, he'll probably kick their ass at practice the next 2 weeks, give more guys opportunities. But it's going to be nut cutting time for him. I can tell you that. It will be nut cutting time. But I don't know if that's actually going to make that team any better. It's like, because this was supposed to be the easy part of their schedule, man. You still have Notre Dame and Clemson and Miami and all these teams coming up here relatively soon.
The thing is that these losses hurt, right? They're embarrassing because I think Nicole Arbach from NBC tweeted out, but it doesn't help that the 2 games that they played have been the only games on the slate, so everybody's watched. But the losses, if they keep compounding, are going to get even more embarrassing because you're going to be playing Clemson and Dabo. You're going to be playing your in-state rivals in Miami, your in-state rivals in Florida at the end of the year. So you're going to be playing some high key matchups against your in-state rivals, people that hate you. The losses, if they keep happening like this, are only going to get more compounded and more embarrassing for coach. So I think he's in a tough position because he's built the program up, right? When they first started, they lost to freaking Jacksonville State. We went in there and beat those guys. Then the next year he comes back, wins 10 games, wins the Cheez-It Bowl over Oklahoma. The next year, they had a case to make the playoffs at 13-0 until Jordan Travis shattered his leg. Taking such a major step back is going to cause like this whiplash effect because he's going to be seen as a coach that nobody believes in, nobody trusts anymore. And I think that that's tough because he's proven that he can build a program up. And I don't think that the ramifications of the potential losses is going to be fair to the record he's built up over time.
Well, I mean, shit, everybody's calling for his job now in Florida State. But to answer your original question about what's he going to do, he is going to threaten everyone's job. If I know him right, he will come out. He will threaten the O-line coach, threaten to fire him. He'll threaten to fire the wide receiver coach. He'll threaten to fire the quarterback coach. He'll threaten to, I mean, DJU is going to be under a microscope like he's never seen in his damn life, even though he was a damn Clemson. You know, he was supposed to be the heir apparent to Trevor Lawrence. This is going to be a different level of intensity, man. I know this guy. This guy's going to come out and just try to get the best out of everyone by being a hard ass.
You don't really have a choice, though, because you can't go into the hole either. Like, you can't just say, oh, it's over, guys. We're going to go. Like, no, hell no. That's pretty much the only choice. That's pretty much the only choice you have at this point.
You have to show your team you're willing to fight, too. So they will be willing to fight. And we'll see how it goes for them. Now, let's go from, like, the complete bottom to the complete top. Georgia football, dog.
Hey, man.
34-3 over Clemson. I'm just going to ask you off. I'll give you my thoughts here in a second. Ask you off top your thoughts about that ass kicking that he gave Dabo.
It's
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart is the heir apparent. We've already known this. His time is here. It's not like he's about to take the torch from Saban. No, Saban's retired, and Kirby's time has been here for a while. He's won 2 out of the last 3 national championships. They have a 40-game win streak in the regular season. Last time they lost was, I believe, at Alabama in 2020. I mean, it's something ridiculous like that. Kirby has set such a crazy standard, and he's found the crazy staff that can keep it up. You have guys like Glenn Schumann, a defensive coordinator, who we'll talk about later. You have guys like Stacey Searles coaching up that offensive line. Then you went out and get T-Rod from Alabama, who's going to be coaching your secondary. You get Dante Jackson from USC, who's helping coach that secondary. They have such a lofty standard to uphold, and they're investing in their program, top to bottom. Like, I believe maybe no other team outside of maybe Ohio State and Alabama, probably Oregon now, is invested in their team. And it shows on the field, man. They're kicking people's ass start to finish. The offensive line is the best offensive line in the country right now. From what I saw week 1, I don't think we can get a proper game from Alabama yet without Caden Proctor. Oregon struggled mightily against Idaho, which was super surprising. So from what I saw, just from the tape, Georgia's offensive line, man, is hellacious. That guy, Jared Wilson, on the interior center, watch out for him. That's the name that's going to rise over the course of the season. And I haven't even talked about all the skill players. I'm just talking about the guys, the meat and potatoes of the team. So I don't want to get too long-winded here, but Georgia has everything they need to make another run for national championship. And before I pass to you, can we please stop with the Carson Beck over analysis? Like, no, he is the guy.
We need to chill that out.
I don't care about – everybody's just warped when they think of Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes. They think it has to look hard. They think it has to look overly beautiful for it to be effective first-round, early top of the draft quarterback play. He's a guy that processes fast, gets the ball out where it's supposed to be, doesn't get flushed in the pocket, has enough athleticism to step up and get you some yards running the ball. What more could you ask for from a quarterback? I don't care.
I almost prefer it not to look hard, to be honest with you.
100%. Like,
I'd rather it look easy out there. And it means he's executing the game plan at a high level and not getting off platform all the time, because that's not what he does best. He's executing, throwing the ball where it needs to be thrown, getting the ball out. That's what you need to do. That's what Bo Nix did at Oregon the past 2 years.
Yep.
That's why he got pick number 10 overall. So just like stop over. I agree with you. I've seen a lot of that. Pisses me the hell off. Like, it's ridiculous. But here's the difference is, like, to a casual fan though, Kai, if I'm watching Shedeur Sanders versus if I'm watching Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders does shit that just jumps off the page and you lose your mind. Like those mind-blowing plays that you're like, you can't teach that. But Carson Beck doesn't have to do that to be the first quarterback taken in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's just watch, enjoy, figure it out on the way. But here's my take on Georgia. And I partly stole this a little bit from Josh Pate. He does a college football show for 247. Shout out to him. I think he does a really good job. But what just blows me away about them It's not just like 40-0 in their last 40 regular season games. It's not 17-2 since 2020 against ranked opponents. It's not 8 of the last 9 that Georgia has beaten Clemson in. It's none of that. It's how prepared they are for every single big game that they go into. Like, you cannot roll out there against Georgia and count on them making mistakes in a big game. You have to beat them. You cannot sit there and hope for them to throw a pick or to fumble the football. You have to go out there, out-execute them, and you have to be the team that makes 0 mistakes. They do not beat themselves. And for Kirby, time after time, when you've beaten the hell out of Clemson a couple of times, when you've beaten the hell out of some of these teams in conference multiple times, there's a lot of players that could overlook these teams. Because if you're at Georgia, you can overlook every team in the country because we've beaten all of them. You know, we won 2 national championships not too long ago. The ability he has to continue to motivate those guys and make them feel disrespected even when they are clearly the best team in the country, it blows me away. And the only other guy I can compare it to, and I'm not saying it's one for one. We have a lot of resume to go reach the guy I'm about to bring up, but it reminds me of how Nick Saban had those Alabama teams going. It's like these teams, no matter what you think about them, no matter how many times you've beaten them, you got to beat the hell out of them again. And you have to have an edge about you when you do it. And Kirby Smart does that, and it's impressive as hell to me every time I watch his team play. They are never unprepared. Never.
And it did look like a team that was playing the first ball game of the year. I mean, and Kirby has, I don't want to say been reluctant, but he wasn't a guy that was hopping in the portal immediately when they first had the opportunity. But he's a guy that's learned how to implement those guys and put them in there. And those guys stepped in immediately and made impacts. You have the Humphreys kid at receiver. You have Colby Young. Those guys came in immediately and made impacts, replaced guys that went
Humphreys is from freaking Vanderbilt, dude. Like, right, it's wild.
Replaced Lab McConkey and Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, who both are in the NFL right now. He's learned how to adapt just enough. I don't think he's made the full-blown transition to be the portal guy like some people, but
sure,
he's added the players where he needs to add them at, and he's done a very good job. The last thing I'll say about him, and integrating the young players. We got to see KJ Bolden. CJ Wiley was committed to Georgia, ended up flipping to Florida State. But you got to see KJ Bolden. You got to see Ellis Robinson. You got to see some of those young guys. You got to see Nate Frazier at running back, who looks like the next running back from Georgia. So you got to see the young guys get in there and play. And I think he does a great job of blending the younger guys, the transfer portal, and then the guys that have slowly worked their way and have found their way on the field, like Dylan Fairchild, the offensive line. So it's a beautiful rotation that you can have that in your program, because I don't think any other program in the country currently has that right now. Alabama, we'll talk about them a little bit later. They played so many guys on defense.
Right.
So I think they tried, but Georgia's level that they're doing it at is just above everybody's right now.
Yeah, and have you seen like the cut up, by the way, of like all the coaches who played Georgia and like their post-game press conferences? It's crazy to see how demoralized these guys are.
Yeah, man.
Like after that game, Dab was like, sometimes you just get your ass whooped. We got our ass whooped. And I remember a couple years ago, was it Shane Beamer at South Carolina, where it's like, you know, they had a very decided advantage up front. Like, where do you think that comes from? He goes, guys, they have 100 fucking 4 stars and 5 stars on the defensive side of the ball. What do you want me to do? And then you have like Mark Stoops, like, if you want me to beat Georgia, you better donate to the NIL fund. Yes. You know, like he just, every single time he beats these teams, he just demoralizes them in a way that I don't think any other coach in America can. One
more thing about Kirby before we move on from these guys, and this is before the early transfer portal window started to become like the big thing, right? They get their high school classes filled up really fast. They're not a team when it comes to the early signing period that's scrambling or hoping for a guy to flip, or they have a big commitment waiting. They do such a fantastic job of identifying Georgia football players and Georgia talent. They go find them, they get them committed, and they keep them signed. It's one thing that I think he has over every coach in the country, because Saban, he was the type that, hey, they got a couple guys in the summer, but they will go through the season and pick up guys and pick up momentum. Kirby has his guys already committed, already bought in, and I think that's a special thing that he has, and it's the lifeblood of that program.
Yeah. Now, final matchup I want to talk about, then we'll get to a few little notes, then we'll get to our winners and losers. USC, LSU. USC, I ain't going to say they're back, but damn, that was a different USC team. They played really good defense. Miller Moss, 378 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. He was the Big Ten Player of the Week on the offensive side of the ball. LSU, I thought it was very performative to see, Ryan Kelly after the game. Again. And I'm like, and he did the execution quote he had a couple of years ago. He's very performative about his LSU post-game press conferences. But USC looked like a completely different ball club from a year ago. And I think there's one difference. Alex Grinch, he's gone.
Yep.
DeAnton Lynn is a better defensive coordinator. And I feel a lot better about Lincoln Riley and his job security in this USC program going into the future with DeAnton Lynn as a defensive coordinator. It's that simple.
Yep. And, so I'm doing my writing thing for SI for USC now. And that was my piece that I dropped Sunday morning before the game. I was like, hey, we think about these recent performances, but when we really think about USC football, we think about Ray Maluga, Brian Cushing, Taylor Mays, Keith Rivers. We think about those type of guys, Clay Matthews. We think about that defense, and can this guy, Dan Lynn, return USC to prominence? And that was what I wrote Sunday morning before the game. And damn, did he answer those questions right away, man. And in the piece, I did shout out the fact that it's not all Dan Lynn. He's going to get all the credit, and he deserves a ton. But Matt Entz left North Dakota State as the head coach to come be the linebackers coach. Eric Henderson left the Los Angeles Rams as the defensive line coach at the Los Angeles Rams to come be the co-DC run game coordinator and the defensive line coach. They revamped that staff top to bottom on defense and got some of the best guys in the country at their respective positions to come fill their role. And they looked incredible. I do want to point out the fact that LSU missed out on a ton of opportunities on offense.
Oh, of course, 100%.
But that is presumed to be one of the most prolific offenses in the country this year. And Garrett Nussmeier looked incredible. Kyron Lacey, 9 catches, 74 yards in the first half, not a catch in the second half. So they did a fantastic job of limiting him in the second half, despite what we can say about the LSU coaching staff. But they did a great job of tackling, being gap disciplined, tackling in space, man. The DBs, Achille Arnold, transfer from Oregon State, Kamari Ramsey, a transfer from UCLA, and the guy Jalen Smith, who was there and has just gotten a ton better within this scheme. The amount of open field tackles that they made to stop drives, to keep them in 2nd and 4s instead of 2nd and 1 was tremendous. And it's something that we haven't seen from a long time in that USC defense. So really impressed with them, impressed with LSU as well. But it was a major program building win for USC, in my opinion.
One thing LSU is going to have to do is tighten up their defensive front. I mean, they're giving up a little bit too much on 1st and 2nd down on just easy little inside zone run plays, maybe a power thrown in, a little counter. And I did like Lincoln Riley getting back to a little bit of his Oklahoma days, ran a little more counter, tried to mix up his run schemes. Thought that was nice to see. And by the way, another Kyron. We had Kyron Hudson. What a fucking play that was.
That was incredible.
That was mind-blowing. That was
absolutely. I was on the fence if it actually hit the ground or not, but I was like, man, rule of cool.
I don't give a damn. That's a catch.
I don't care if it did or not. That's a catch, bro. And
should there be a rule about that? Can we implement a rule where it's like if it's exceptional for him to bring it in, if it just scrapes the ground, we just ignore it. We act like we didn't see it. You know what I mean?
If it's not Jack State or Alabama, I don't care, man. Rule of cool applies all the time. But I think the last catch he made on that last drive, on that honey hole throw that Miller Moss threw to get them in field goal range, that ended up getting the targeting, that catch was equally as impressive as the one-hand catch. I know the one-hand catch is the flashy one, but making that catch knowing you're about to get your block knocked off, holding on to the ball, maintaining the ball through the ground, through the contact, that was incredibly impressive. So I thought he had a really good game. He had a drop or two there, but he made the biggest plays of the game. The one-handed catch to kind of flip the momentum and get them going, and then that catch at the end of the game, which put them in the field goal range and ultimately helped them score that last touchdown. So big kudos to Kyron.
All right, now we're going to fly through a couple of teams. We're going to go real quick. We'll start with Alabama. Alabama looked dominant. Jalen Milroe threw, 9 passes? Looked great. By the way, I don't get why so everybody gave, credit to Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, great player. Everybody wants to talk about, Auburn, Cam Coleman, 5-star wide receiver. He's going to come in. Everybody was kind of sleeping on Ryan Williams, kind of, right? Everybody was kind of in the back waiting, and, the fact that he has to play this big role in his freshman year, it might be a little trouble. 2 catches for 100-some-odd yards, 2 touchdowns. Thought he looked
Yeah,
phenomenal.
man.
But that team was very dominant against the Western Kentucky team that should win, 7-8 games this year?
Yeah, there should be a pretty – I think they're going to be a bowl-eligible team at the end of the season. So it was impressive to see them dominate that fast. And before I talk about the offense very quickly, the defense, man. Kane Wallman leaving South Alabama as the head coach to come be the defensive coordinator. Man, incredibly impressive, flipping the scheme on his head. We're not used to seeing that. That 4-2-5 swarm defense. We really got to see those guys pin their ears back. And Jahad Campbell, man, he looks like a different beast this year. So watch out for Jahad Campbell at linebacker. Watch out for Quay Russaw at linebacker. That team looks different up front, man. I haven't seen Alabama have that much depth up front, especially on the outside at the bandit position. That's going to be an integral part of Kane Wallman's defense. Incredible to see that much depth. You have LT Overton, the Texas A&M transfer. He looked incredible out there. James Smith, who was a former 5-star teammate of Quay Russaw. Those guys are now redshirt freshmen coming into this year, looking incredible. And they play so many guys on the back end. Xavier Brown, true freshman, comes in there and start. Jalen Mbakwe comes in there and plays a lot. Zay Mincy played a few snaps. I mean, you just look at the depth that they have in the backfield of young guys. It was great to get those guys reps. And I think that'll yield dividends as the season goes on. And the offense, explosive, man. I really enjoy what I saw from the offense. Kalen DeBoer, tons and tons of motion, tons of eye candy, and that's going to bode well for guys like Ryan Williams on the outside. They have that game-breaking speed. When you're looking at all these guys, he did a good job of getting the tight ends involved. 6 running backs played and got carries. Really love what I saw from Justice Haynes and Jan Miller. So excited about the prospects of Jalen Milroe running a little bit more too, taking the thought process out of it, because he's a guy that people piss me off when people talk about Milroe, because they act like he's like a run-first guy first, but he's actually the guy that holds onto the ball too long. He wants to make every pass, and I don't know if it's internally he's trying to prove people wrong. Like, fuck you, I can be a guy that –
the man's got a crazy deep ball. Like, I don't –
Yeah, crazy deep ball.
Yeah.
But he's a guy – I'm happy that they're doing some more design quarterback runs. It looks like they're going to be doing this year. Kind of just take the thought process out of it, because he's a guy that's going to want to hold on to the ball and make every play and go through the progression. So I like seeing that from Kalen DeBoer. And it just – I call him the silent psycho, because if you really listen to what he's saying, the guy is very confident in what he does, and he has the track record to prove it. So excited about them in their long-term prospects. And they're going to get a test here with South Florida and that offense and Byron Brown and what they have. And they're going to go play those guys. And then the next week they'll be in Camp Randall playing Wisconsin. So there's no easy into the season for Alabama. They got some tough tests.
Yep. Now Notre Dame beats A&M on the road. A&M, Connor Wigman wasn't that guy. I love seeing my guy Mike Elko come down the side like, run the fucking ball, run the
awesome.
ball. That was great. Notre Dame, to me, I'm just going to leave it as a one-liner here. I just think they have a Notre Dame identity on steroids this year, and Marcus Freeman leads the charge there. Penn State versus West Virginia. Shout out Penn State. That's a sleeper team. Don't lose sight of it. Andy Kotelnicki, I think, is already like, that's a guy me and Kai are both high on. Yeah, I think that it's already paying dividends. 34-12 on the road against West Virginia. Now let's go ahead and do this. Let's get to our winners and losers of the week. I'll go ahead and start with my winner of the week. And there's a reason we didn't talk about it when we're doing our week one reactions. Miami on the road against Florida, 41-17. And honestly, you could really group in our guy Cam Ward in there, because I think this is the first time Cam Ward has really had the national exposure with a big program. And I watched him at Washington State. I got to see a little bit of him at Cardinal Word. Like, he's always been this phenomenal. He can make plays off platform. That throw rolling out to the left to the back of the end zone, good Lord. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more sort of NFL draft talk around this guy. But 26 for 35, 385 yards, 3 TDs, just a 1 interception. Xavier Restrepo, 7 catches, 112 yards. Defensively, that D-line is nasty. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Like, when we're talking about the Florida teams, Pete Thamel put out Florida State, oh, this is the best defensive line in the country. I think that's way more true about Miami than it ever was about Florida State. This team actually plays with physicality, can get downhill, can make some things happen, can come off the edge. They press the pocket really well. They hurt Graham Mertz late in that game. I mean, this team looks unbelievable right now. And when you look out around the rest of the ACC, and we'll talk about an ACC team with my loser, Clemson's lost. NC State was not that convincing against Western Carolina. And Florida State looks like absolute.
Virginia Tech took a bad loss.
Yeah, Virginia Tech lost to Vandy. I just look at Miami and that team. They're in the full-on driver's seat in the ACC.
100%, man. And kind of segue into my winners, man. My winners of the week, I'm going to go to, and they're not they're not players, they're not teams, they're coaches. Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator at Georgia, Kane Wommack, defensive coordinator at Alabama. I thought what those guys put on the field week one, the complexity, the intensity at which they called the game, they held nothing back week one. They showed a ton of looks, especially Wommack and what he was able to do. But I think Glenn Schumann and Kane Wommack are two people to watch this season because they're going to be put in prime positions to be head coach candidates. I know Alabama fans aren't going to want to hear that, but Kane Wommack is a guy that I don't believe will be in Tuscaloosa long. I think he's going to go in there, have some credible defenses, maybe one or two, and get up out of there and go be a head coach again because he's had success as a head coach at South Alabama with limited talent on those teams. So I think those two are shaping up to be the cream of the crop for the next head coaching cycle, and it's just going to be on them when they want to leave. So those two will be my big winners from the weekend, purely off of the scheme and how they were able to call that game week one. That's incredibly impressive to have those guys ready to go and put what they did on film.
Now, losers, I'm just going to go Florida State. We already talked about it off the top of the show, but they don't have a redeeming quality, and it certainly ain't DJU, and it certainly ain't really anybody on the skill positions on the offensive side of the ball. They ran for 21 yards against Boston College. They gave up 263 yards. Defensively, that D-line is not worth really anything. Yeah, they have a bunch of NFL bodies, but they're not coached all that well, and they're just not playing physical. Linebacker is probably one of the worst positions on the field for them right now. There's just nothing redeeming about that team. Now, I will talk about it a little bit later. I think the outlook on my favorite group of five team, my alma mater, like the outlook for that Memphis Florida State game's a little bit changed now that Florida State has struggled the way they have, but they're the biggest loser of the week. And certainly I think already they have put themselves in that, biggest loser of the year, considering where they started and where they're going to end up. They will not be a top 25 team. I'm not buying any of that.
Yeah, my biggest loser of the week is going to be surprising to some people, but LSU, I think that was a terrible loss for them. Not in the sense that USC is not a good football team, but because they're going to have to go through the SEC schedule now. Even with the 12-team playoff, 8-4, 9-3 might not be enough to get you in, especially when you have a loss to USC, who, in my opinion, is a solid football team on the right direction. But that's a team that's still going to finish the season with 3 or 4 losses probably at the end of the year, in my opinion. So that's going to end up being not as good of a loss as you would hope for it to be. So I think they left a lot of meat on the bone offensively. They were very aggressive defensively, and they came back to bite them a little bit with Miller Marshall's having some high-level quarterback play and the receivers making some ridiculous catches, right? But that is a game that, in my opinion, that they needed to win because go through their schedule, man. They have an incredibly tough schedule. You still have to go play Alabama. They have to go play Ole Miss, Texas A&M, who defense looked incredible. Still got to play Oklahoma at the end of the year. We don't know what that Florida team's going to look like, but it's never easy to go to the Swamp and play. So they have a tough schedule, and it's going to be a team that I think is going to have to scratch and claw and fight to make it into that playoff picture. And I think that's going to be important for Brian Kelly because LSU is not a team or university that's going to be happy with 9-3, 8-4s, and playing in the Citrus Bowl at the end of the year. That's just not the standard there. So I thought that was a big game for him.
Yep. Now let's do our group of five check-in because we have to, follow this all year. G5 classified. We talk some G5 ball, and we have to figure out who's going to be the college football playoff representative for the G5. And we thought it was really this 3-horse race: Memphis, Boise State, Liberty. Liberty didn't look good against Campbell, 41-24. Just didn't really look all that dominant. Now, Caden Salter, running back, look good. I understand that. But defensively, this is something we've been talking about for a while. Yeah. They're just not very talented defensively. Boise State, sort of the same idea. Ashton Genty, he should be, no matter what, I don't think he'll end here, but he should be on your top 5 Heisman ballot right now. 267 100%. Yards on 20 carries, 6 TDs. That is like more than I can't even do that on NCAA. I can't do that on college football 25. But they gave up 45 points to Georgia Southern. If you'll remember, that was my G5 game of the week last week. And I said they're going down south to all that humidity. It's different. It's different when you visit a place like that. And Clay Helton has Georgia Southern at least like manageable. They're solid. Yep. But it was 56-45 there. Memphis, we'll do the home team talk a little bit later, but I there's a lot of reasons that I am not overly enthused with their performance. Only won 40-0 over a really bad FCS team in North Alabama. They lost to SEMO 37-15 last week, and they only won 40-0, and they only mustered 9 points in the second half. I think there's some teams outside of the big three that we should be talking about a whole lot more. And I think it'll help us segment, transition to our guests a little bit better. But UNLV, man, on the road
really
against Houston, 27-7. You win by 20, first game of the year after having to replace your all-conference caliber quarterback who went off to USC, after having to replace a few guys and reload from a 9-win team. They hadn't won 9 games since 1984. Like, I continue to be impressed by the work that Barry Odom keeps putting out there and the talent that they really do have. Ricky White, Woodard, their linebacker, had an unbelievable game. Matthew Sluka, I think, is a really good quarterback. The Jesus, like they have some really good talent and they're very well coached. And this team really could threaten. I think they really could threaten the rest of the G5 teams that think they have a chance at the college football playoff.
100%. Even if they're not able to run the table and be the team themselves, that's a team that nobody's going to want to play throughout the season. That's a team that could ruin another G5 team's playoff hope. So I think that's going to be a very good team. And one more team I wanted to shout out. We won't do any long analysis about them, but I don't know if it says more about South Carolina or ODU, but Old Dominion played South Carolina to the brink last week, and I thought that they played a pretty dang good ball game. I got to watch some of the third and fourth quarter. They look like a team that is going to be able to compete with the rest of the group of 5 teams.
Yeah, and then 2 others I want to mention. James Madison, I know they played Charlotte, 30-7, whooped up on them. We know what they did last year. They look very good again this year. And then I think I'm going to have to turn at least a little bit, and I hate to do this to you, guy. I really do to you. But the ass whooping Coastal Carolina put on your Gamecocks, the ass whooping they put on Jacksonville State 55-27. You can't overlook that. Those are the type of games that you get into, and they should help you, respect a team a whole lot more when we have this type of conversation. To go on the road and to just dismantle that team, limb from limb in that type of, situation. Get first game of the year. I thought it was impressive as hell. I'm going to have to side-eye them the rest of the year.
Incredibly impressive. And a home crowd that was 19,000 strong, a very good opener on national TV, CBS Sports. So it was a big look for both programs. And one program came in extremely prepared, and Jacksonville State did not look prepared at all. It looked like a team that was looking at a little bit of a shell shock. They lost a ton of guys last year. I believe over 50 new guys are on the team. But the guys that were playing, for the most part, are the experienced guys. There are a lot of guys that were returning and the guys that we knew what to expect. Mainly on the offense and defensive line, there was a lot of guys that have played a lot of football. So that was surprising to see the lack of continuity on both sides of the ball. But really what it comes down to is I think the tempo worked against Rich Rod in that offense. And I talked to him about it before, and he was like, that's just what we do. When it's working, it's working. When it's not, it's not. And to me, like, it's a tough way to watch the game, even though I understand it. Because, look, when it's on point, right, it looks like the best offense you could ever run. You're scoring touchdowns. They can't get set. You're running up and down the field. La Tech is an example. Last year, they ran for over 500 yards, right? But then you get in a situation like this where they only average 58 seconds per drive for the entire first half of the ball game. Think about that. And people were giving the defense a hard time, and they did a terrible job in taking away those one-on-one matchups that Coastal created. But, man, if they're on the field for damn near the entire first half, it's almost impossible, especially in Jacksonville, Alabama in late August. First game of the season, it's hot. They're having to deal with 12 personnel, 2 tight ends coming at you, running at you for the whole game. It's tough for those guys on defense. So the one thing I was encouraged about is that it was a lot of one-on-one matchups that they lost. If they could find a way to either replace those guys and get a little bit better or take away those one-on-one matchups, then they'll have a better chance in these games. And there's no easy test. There's no putting it behind you. You go to Louisville to play nationally ranked Louisville this coming week if you're Jacksonville State. So it's going to be tough for them. But with Coastal Carolina, nothing but credit. They came to beat a very good Jacksonville State team who just come off a 9-win season, brought back a lot of those players. This is a Jacksonville State team that has won 9+ games in 8 out of the last 10 seasons. So regardless of the talent level, it's not that big of a disparity. They just came in there and kicked our ass, and they played better football. Hats off to them. And like you said, you got to watch them going forward.
But the big winner of the group of 5 this week would have to be UNLV going on the road, beating Houston, a Big 12 team by 20. Can we start clapping it up? Can we start clapping it up, Kai? We have Barry Odom, head coach of UNLV, next. Stick around. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as this guy. I'm not saying he's nearly as good or will be as good as this guy. What is the difference between the background stories of how where they are to where they were to where they are now of Zach Edey and Tim Duncan?
Ooh.
What's the difference? They both started playing basketball right before they got to college, and they became the best players in college basketball in 4 years. How do we know? How do we know that he's not a basketball phenom? Because everything we've seen from him suggests that he's a guy that's on the path to be great.
He was a baseball player, wanting to be a pitcher with an 85-mile-an-hour fastball. He ain't going nowhere. They give him a basketball, and of the 5-6 years he's been playing organized basketball, he has been the Naismith Player of the Year in 2 of them. In the NCAA, that included Donovan Clingan, that included some of the Reed Shepard, some of these other cats that are now in the NBA. And I have come full circle on Zach Edey again. On draft night, I was out. I couldn't be more all in on him. I put money on him as the NBA Rookie of the Year. Like, I think he could be that missing piece.
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
10-2, is that sufficient if we make the conference championship?
I think making and competing for the conference championship, I would say that was a success.
No matter how many wins or losses you have.
I think the ultimate goal is to win the conference. So by making the conference championship, you're giving yourself a real opportunity. I would say that we should be competing every year to win the conference. Will I be disappointed if we don't win it? Absolutely, because I think this team has the favorite and has the talent to do so. But I'll chalk up making the conference title game a success.
I just put up 9-3, I think it was. I could see people being pretty upset based off the success last year. You brought back Brock, Demir. You've got all these pieces, and you can only give me 9 wins.
Yeah,
Houston's gone. SMU's gone.
100%. I think 9-3 people would be pissed.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Welcome back into G5 Classified. Joining the show today, I gotta say, probably the most impressive week from a G5, impressive win and week from a G5 program. We bring in head coach of UNLV football, Barry Odom. Coach, what's happening, man? How are you?
What's up, fellas? Great to see you, man. Thanks for having me on, and excited always to have a chance to visit with you guys and represent our program and our players and all the things that we're trying to get done here.
Yes, sir. No, you got to holler at me off the top. You lost a all conference caliber quarterback a year ago. You reload with Matthew Sluka, bring him from Holy Cross. Like, what was your confidence level going into last week? 20-point win on the road against a Big 12 opponent. What was the confidence level with this team this year?
Yeah, as you know, every team's so different. And I thought that what we had done in not only the development of our program with the guys returning on our roster, but also some new additions, I thought we had a chance of being solid. And it's all unknown going into week 1. We know that. The in-game adjustments are so huge. I liked our plan going into it. I didn't really know what we were going to get on the other side because I believe Houston had 67 or so newcomers with their new coach. So we did so much off-season work on where the coordinators were from, where the new players were from, and really trying to find out, what they were going to look like. I know Coach Fritz is a really good coach, got a lot of respect for him. But our guys, we had an unbelievable June, July, and August. And I knew we were ready to go play. We were game ready. I didn't know that we would be able to control the line of scrimmage the way that we did on both sides of the ball. That was the key to the game. And then, we left a lot of things out there point-wise. We got early in the third quarter, 24-0, and I told the offense, I said, do not throw the ball. Don't put it in the air. Keep it on the ground. We've got this thing under control. Let's get out of here. And our kids played really, really well we tackled well early. Game 1, we tackled well. We had minimal, we had 2 penalties that brought back explosive plays, which is frustrating, but we'll learn from those. That it was a really good start for us, and the way that our schedule lays out, it's going to be a gauntlet on where to be good really every single week.
Yeah, and you got to holler at me real quick. Jackson Woodard. This reminds me of throwback 2014 Tank Jakes level performance that he had. I know you remember that.
What a stat line, man. Yeah.
11 total tackles, 7 solo, 3 sacks, 4 TFLs, and a PBU. Good Lord.
He was a monster. And, the great thing is he prepares like it's his Super Bowl every single week. And he played for me when I was at Arkansas. He was a walk-on there and ended up deciding that he needed a new change of scenery, and we were fortunate to get him. He could have gone a lot of places because I think people saw the value of what kind of person he was and what kind of player he could be. And preseason, he's our the Mountain West Player of the Year preseason wise. So I think off to a great start, and he's just scratching the surface. He's going to be he'll be so productive this year. He's the heart and soul of what we're doing on defense, and he would have fit in really good to that 2014 Memphis defense for sure.
Coach, 48 rushing attempts, 4.1 yards a pop. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but can you speak to the amount of effort and intensity it takes up front to do that in the ball game, especially the first game of the year when people are still getting into shape? Can you talk about how in shape your guys are and how they finish the ball game off for you?
That is, I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a lot of noise nationally about Notre Dame playing at A&M and what went into that on, the hydration levels, the electrolytes, and all the things, because a team from the north going to the south and playing and what that looked like. And, I don't think Notre Dame had any cramps and so some of those things. Well, we were the same way. It's hot in Vegas. It still is hot. It's probably 110 out right now, but we don't have any humidity. And everybody says, it's 112, but it's dry heat. Well, damn, it's still hot now. 112 is 112. So, but I was a little bit concerned about that. But I also believe in what we did in June, July, and August. I believe that game for us was won long before we stepped into the arena. I believe it was done on the training and the way that we practice, the things that we put our team through June, July, and August in fall camp, on 2 spotting practices, on making sure that the number of the rep volume was where it needs to be, that we could go execute at a high level. And then it goes back to our kids. They embraced that. They understood, and they think, and they believe, and I do too, that we practice as good or better than everybody in the country. And there's a lot of statistical analysis that goes into that on the reasons why, but it showed up. We didn't have one guy cramp. They had guys starting in the second quarter that were doing that. And I think if you can establish the line of scrimmage and we could keep leaning on people, our offensive line coach and Vance Weiss does a great job. And really they established it up front that, a 4.1 yard average, if you're running at a 4-yard clip, usually the result for us, you're going to end up breaking one. And, just keep getting first downs, just keep moving the sticks. We incorporated some quarterback run into that, which helped us. And then defensively took control of the game on the line of scrimmage as well.
Yeah, shout out to Vance Weiss, by the way. Shout out, man. No one's ever drowned in sweat. You gotta live by that. He used to have that as a poster on the old Memphis O-line room there. Hashtag tough wins to this day. I still see it in his bio on Twitter or X, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Do you still wake up at night in the middle of the night listening to him coach you or
oh
teach
yeah,
you?
no. Night, I don't necessarily wake up. Those are called nightmares. You usually stay asleep through them.
Yeah,
no, holler at me, transfer quarterback, man, Matthew Sluka. I mean, because to be honest with you, here's the truth of it. Kyron put me on him. I mean, he said, because Kyron came from the FCS level when he, sort of followed all these programs, and he comes from Holy Cross, Matthew Sluka. So like what ultimately went in when Jaden left for USC? What's the process like to go find a guy like that at the FCS level? Is it immediate, or do you do a bunch of film study and finally decide, hey, let's offer this guy, see if he wants to come?
Well, Coach, this is kind of my question too, so I'll throw a little bit more in there. Personnel-wise, like, how do y'all even get to that point where you're like, hey, we're going to go look for a guy from Holy Cross?
Right, exactly.
The portal, with the NIL situation, it's bonkers right now. It's the wild, wild west. So having the personnel staff that can go find diamonds in the rough like that are more important than ever.
I think you look at both really good questions, and that's deep analysis on what it really is, because, you know, I don't want to lose any players, but if we do, our charge as a staff is we're going to go find a way to upgrade that position. There are good football players everywhere. And if you believe in the principles of the philosophy of recruiting on, let's find somebody that is a fit for us physically on what we're going to ask them to do. They've also got the factors that we're looking for at that position. Then let's go find them, let's go recruit them, and let's find a way to get them to say yes. We've had a lot of success on transfers coming to UNLV. And, you know, Vegas is a really good spot to end up finishing your career, in my opinion. So we're a high school recruiting team. We've signed 48 high school kids, but we've also have been very select, direct, and aggressive in the transfer market. We're going to continue to do that. So when we knew Jaden Maeva was going to USC, we took every quarterback that was in the portal and started evaluating them. And we ended up getting 2 guys out of the portal, both FCS guys. Haj Malik Williams from Campbell University is on our roster as well. And then Matthew Sluka, as you mentioned. And it was great competition throughout fall camp on who was going to be our starter. And then we had the guy that was a backup last year, Cam Friel, that stayed in the program. So I do believe we've got 3 quarterbacks on our roster that we can play winning football with. And you guys both know how important it is. If you've got a quarterback, you got a chance in every game. And if you don't have a quarterback, good luck. It's
Right.
really hard.
Right. You can have dogs all over the rest of the field. You got 4 and 5 stars everywhere, and you're still going to come up short. Now, like when it comes to like your off seasons, and I know we're in season, and we're moving forward here. We see ball played every weekend, but when it comes to the off season, how much more intricate is it? How much more of your time is taken up on trying to manage your roster, keep guys on campus, do that type of thing than it was in the past when you're at Mizzou, you're at Arkansas, you're at Memphis? How much more goes into it?
You know, percentage wise, obviously it's changed. It was a very, very high percentage this year. From the time our bowl game was over last year until we're sitting here today, the daily roster management piece takes up an overwhelming amount of time. We had some really good players on our team last year, so that they had opportunities to go other places, and we were able to keep the high majority of them, which was a credit to our assistant coaches and what we've got going here culturally. And then you look at, okay, we've got an open spot, and how you manage your roster. If we have a senior leave or going to be senior, a junior classification, I want to find somebody that fits that spot with the same eligibility left. So your roster breakdown from seniors to freshmen, you don't get out of whack and have one year where you've got 37 seniors. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. The personnel, the roster management. You know, we don't have a very big staff here. You know, we don't. We got our 10 assistant coaches. We got GAs. Got a couple of analysts on either side. Our recruiting department is a department of 2. But we're going to make it work. And I don't want to hear excuses about, we don't have enough people. We got plenty enough people. You got to be organized. You got to be direct. You got to find out who fits in your system, and then you go get them, and let's go out recruit people, which we can do here.
Yeah, Coach. You know, the saying goes, a surgeon likes to start cutting. He likes to start his day cutting. I would gotta like to start my day watching film, right? So I'm watching film all summer. I'm working through my wide receiver scouting chart, and I get to a guy by the name of Ricky White. And I turned that film on, and I couldn't believe what I saw, especially at that level. And even though, I'm an FCS kid, I played G5, so I know there's a ton of talent there, right? But he's a guy that I think has like top 50, top 75 draft potential. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of player he is?
Yeah, it's unbelievable that the things that he does every day in practice. It's amazing when your best players are also your hardest workers. And we've got that in Ricky White on offense. Jacob DeJesus was a returning All-American for us. And then defensively, Jackson Woodard, which was mentioned early. Ricky had 1,500 yards last year, and I think he's one of the elite receivers in all of college football. I think he'll be, if stays healthy and continues to do the things that he does every day, I think he'll be a opportunity to be a first-day draft pick. He's that talented. Elite work ethic, a wonderful leader, was voted as a captain by his teammates, and every single day you're going to get his best. And I don't even have to worry about what are we going to get out of Ricky today in practice, because it's going to be whatever the level and the standard of the expectation is, he's doing it every single day. And I can't say enough good things about what he does every day for our program, and then on game day, how special and elite he is.
Yep. Now holler at me about the funds and the donations rolling in with the success you've seen. Are we moving away from riding bulls named Widowmaker to try to get that money all raised, or do we have anything else up our sleeve there, or what?
I did that for good reason. I will do anything for my players and our team, except I will not ever get on a bull again. That was foolish. That was bad. I hurt for a couple of weeks after that. The left shoulder still is a little messed up.
Did they have you following the finger, or what?
I did a lot of things after I left. Mostly was sit down with a small shot glass and try to get through the evening.
Right.
We had practice that next day. But I used it as an example for our team. We slow motioned it and watched it, and everybody made fun of me. And but I got my tail up off the ground. I was hurting, but I got up. So we used it as a toughness video as well. We've got 2.5 million people here in the city. It's very, very supportive of our program. They understand what it takes, and I am a believer in the NIL world. You can either embrace it, and it can be a big part of what you're doing, or you can try to run away from it, and it's going to catch up with you. I'm all in. We're embracing it. The city has done the same thing for us, and we're in a really good spot.
Your collective starting to move in the right direction?
We're trending up. Yes, sir. And if you guys would like to make a donation, I'll make sure I got the correct people get in touch with. I'll get my people in touch with your people.
We'll put the link in the bio under this podcast.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Coach,
I found out
player,
a long time ago, guys. I found out a long time ago. I'm a lot better coach with really good players. So that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Coach, as a former player, I know we were always taught not to look too far ahead, right? As a coach, you kind of have to do the same thing. But with the new implementation of the 12-team playoff, the group of 5 has a guaranteed slot now, right? Or could have a guaranteed spot in the future. How soon do you see UNLV working themselves up to a program that should be a realistic goal?
Well, I look at, the group of 5, however we want to label it, we better have a spot in that 12-team, because at the end of the year, the Mountain West champion every single year, there's nobody in the country that really wants to play them. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you go back in history, I know, Gabe, when in 2014 at the end of the year, nobody would have signed up to come play us. I guarantee it. And so you look at those things, we know that our margin of error is 0. We've got to be right every single week. You do that with the schedule that we have. We had Houston. Week 3, we have Kansas. I'm not even going to get into the Mountain West Conference. I'm still talking non-conference. We play right. Syracuse comes here. We go to Oregon State. And then, oh, by the way, you got Fresno, you got Boise, you got San Diego State. You got everybody in the Mountain West that you've got to play every single week. So at the end of the year, okay, if we're still standing in championship weekend, the first weekend in December, then absolutely whoever wins that game the first week in December should be in that 12-team slot. I believe, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, I'm just very, very convicted in what I believe in. I think UNLV is in a position on a national stage to have a program that makes noise nationally every single year. That's my goal. That's the aspiration. That's where we've set the standard. That's what we're working for every single year.
Yep. Now, speaking of that standard, this is what's insane to me. And I think we've had a couple of conversations about this in the past, but since 2000, you're the 6th coach at UNLV, and 9 wins was what you got to last year. I think the last time, the last time UNLV got to 9, 10, 11 wins was 1984 when they were playing like Cal State Fullerton at that moment. What went into you ultimately taking that job? Because you sort of look at all the guys that came before you, and a lot of these guys didn't really ever get another shot at head coach. So it's kind of a scary proposition, sort of looking at what came before you and how long they lasted and the success that they did not have. And we know UNLV doesn't have a super long track record with success on the football side of things. What went into taking that job and ultimately making it successful, knowing you could make it successful when you ultimately took it?
Well, I think there's a number of things that go into it. I was really happy at the University of Arkansas as the defensive coordinator. I didn't, for my ego, I didn't need to be a head coach again. I wasn't searching for that, but I did have some opportunities. The 3 years I was there as a defensive coordinator, I had some opportunities of people that called and wanted to talk to me, and I wanted the right fit. I wanted the right time. I wanted for it all to be aligned to get back in the chair. Number one, it starts with administration. Number two, I think you have to have an opportunity in today's world to be in a position that you can attract NIL dollars. Las Vegas can do that. We've got a really strong administrative team in Eric Harper as the director of athletics. I had been in Vegas the years I'd been an assistant coach in recruiting, so I'd seen the facilities. I knew that we played in Allegiant Stadium. I knew there were opportunities there. Okay, I didn't really look too much in the past, in the history. And really when I got here, started studying it, they averaged 3 wins a year for the last 39 years. And that's obviously scary. Okay, we won 9 games last year. And you're right, 1984 was the last time that they won anywhere equal to that. 2013 was the last bowl game they had been to. They had never won a conference championship. I look at that as opportunity because the infrastructure things were here that you could go have success. And especially now for me is the way how I think you can build a roster every single year. There aren't any rebuilding plans anymore. To me, it's immediate. It's now on the way that you can restructure a roster. So when I found out that this job was open and they reached out and contacted me, I was excited about it. I thought they had a chance to do some special things because of the way that college football is now aligned on how you can build a roster, the opportunities of what we had here resource-wise to be able to build things. And I guess I was just hard-headed enough to think we could go get it done.
Last one for me, Coach, and we'll get you up out of here. But the clock rules, man. You're going into year 2 of this. I've talked to a ton of coaches about it. I talked to Coach Rich Rodriguez up here in Jacksonville. He said he didn't give a damn, but I talked to other coaches who hated it. How do you feel about the clock rules? How has it impacted how you call the game, manage those late game situations, end of half situations? How does it affect you?
Yeah, I think number one for me, I'm always labeled a defensive guy. That's where I grew up. So I've tried to spend, I learned from a time at Missouri as a head coach, some blind spots that I had on some things I needed to get better at. And I've spent a lot of time with NFL staffs since, I guess, 2019, just in the off season on in-game management skills and what that looks like, and charts and analytics and graphs and things that are going to help you manage a game. And then for me, the way that I study every single week, my checklist of things that I've got to hit to be prepared for a team on situational football. I went overboard this last offseason on spending time with a number of people in the NFL that I respect that could already give me the answers to how they call it with the 2-minute warning built in, or now we're calling it the 2-minute timeout. So I feel like,
hate it, by the way.
Right. I want to correct myself. It's a 2-minute warning. I feel like I'm prepared for our team to be able to make those decisions, but it's done again for me well in advance of getting into that game situation. When to use the timeout, when to keep it, what that looks like. And then you've got to be able to go apply it and be bold enough sometimes when it doesn't seem like you used the timeout to go ahead and use one, or let it go down to the 2-minute time and let things take care of themselves.
Yeah. The NFL, do they have, can you get this question to somebody in the know here? Does the NFL have like a copyright thing with the 2-minute warning that's keeping them?
Because of all the discussion that we have now received, there's got to be something to it. There's a story behind the story. Got to be.
It's insane. I get corrected at every corner by calling it the 2-minute warning. And then final thing, before I let you roll, I want to take a little off camera conversation on air, at least a little bit. I know you said you're done with riding bulls, but you're right there in the center. The UFC Apex is there. Maybe to raise some money, we could get you in there. We could get a flyweight, a bantamweight, lightweight, somebody like that. You get in the ring for 3 to 5 minutes and start sparring. We can give you the headgear. We can handle that.
I've always been described in my body weight style as husky. Even back like second grade, little kid had to wear husky jeans. I don't care if they say, hey, you're going against a 105-pound dude. I'm going to say not only no, but hell no. I'm not stepping inside a ring. Even different than different.
Have you had someone approach you with something like that?
So
Is that what you were telling me?
I think someone in the city thought, oh, this would be a great idea. He's crazy enough to get on a bull. I bet we could throw a ticket item out there to raise money again for your team and put you in the ring. What do you think about it? And I respectfully declined.
It's probably the right decision. Well, Coach, you the man. I appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the season. Certainly good luck this weekend against Utah Tech.
Thanks, guys.
Yes,
really
sir.
appreciate you, Gabe. Great to see you, man. Take care.
Yes, sir.
Of course, last week we talked about the Anthony Edwards comments. Magic Johnson has responded, and this is him speaking, although it's in tweet form. I never respond to a guy that's never won a championship. You just responded to a guy that you said you wouldn't respond to. You just did. I mean, you can't start off and say, I don't respond to a guy. You're responding to the guy.
There's certain people in this world that I give passes to. Magic Johnson will always get a pass with me, with the comments that he
Not
made.
me, man.
And so,
not me. That's just terrible.
Isaiah Thomas said it best when he talked about the only thing that's happened nowadays is we have just done a better. They've just done a better job of glorifying the 3-point line.
When he talked about the 3-point shot has created the illusion that the athlete and skills athletic species.
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Basketball just does not move the needle. I'm sorry, it doesn't. I know we live in a basketball town. I know the University of Memphis has always been primarily referred to as a basketball school, but basketball doesn't move the needle. It does not generate the money. It does not generate, the fan support. It doesn't generate a tenth as much as football does.
I agree with you. Basketball doesn't move the needle. The 2-time defending national champion basketball program, though, moves the needle. It does to a certain extent. If you're talking about brands in the Northeast that are playing college athletics, both football and basketball, that's probably the biggest brand, if not top 2, top 3.
Are we going to see the Big 12 change, or does money talk the entire way through? Football rules all.
I think football will always rule all.
It will never change.
Tune in to On the Bluff with Christian Fowler and Gabe Kuhn every Tuesday at 12 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Appreciate Barry Odom for carving out some time. Definitely going to be watching them the rest of the year. Unbelievable performance week 1 against Houston, winning by 20 on the road. Now, I was watching the Clemson-Georgia game. We talked about it off the top of the show, Kyron, and how bad Georgia whooped Clemson's ass. Now, Roddy White, you remember him, former Falcons all-pro, Pro Bowl wide receiver, damn legend, unbelievable. He ended up putting a tweet out that has actually caught some traction, and I think we can pop this thing up. Thanks, Kenny Stubbs, right there. Shout out to Kenny Stubbs. Roddy White said, Clemson got way too many white dudes on the field on offense. This ain't them. You mean to tell me you only got one black dude out there making plays? That's a recruiting problem. Now he caught some like flack for this guy. Like people went after his ass for this tweet, and my only reaction is, he's right. Like he's got a point. Like Iowa can get away with it, but also Iowa doesn't win those big ass games. Iowa doesn't beat people like Georgia. if you're going to be sticking in games like that, trying to get over top, like I think Roddy White has a hell of a point, man. You can't get by with just strictly whites. You can't get by with 10 of 11 guys on your offense being whites in a game like that.
Well, yeah, and it kind of just shows the lack of recruiting and the lack of adaptation a little bit too, because at a program like Clemson, you think about DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Justin Ross, even Mike Williams. So when you go from that to looking at a guy who's, we don't want to make any generalizations here, but they're going to be doing what we're doing not too long from now.
Exactly, bro. Exactly.
That type of stuff.
I mean, he found them. He found them in like, you know, they were at Sunday school. They were they were in Bible study. I mean, he found these guys and brought them down because he knows what his program's built upon, and that's, you know, the Lord up above.
And it's funny, that's a hilarious way to put into perspective Dabo's big problem right now. And like I just said a little bit, it's just his lack of adaptation, man. The portal's there, and we just talked to Barry Odom. He said, I'm embracing it. I'm leaning full into it. Kirby Smart, we talked about earlier. He's leaned into it. Saban leaned into it before he retired. Of course he did. So if those guys are doing it, Dabo, you're not too good to do it yourself, man.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I like Nick Saban. I'm not saying he didn't recruit white dudes, but he would not have more than one white wide receiver in a wide receiver room at any given moment. I don't know. Did he had like who was that? He had one white DB.
He had Garrett Dieter from Bowling Green.
I remember him. Yeah, because I played against him.
Richard Mullaney from Oregon State.
Who was the secondary guy? It was like Nico something. He had a pick. It was like 2012.
Vinny Sunseri.
Yes, sir. That's the only white DB I ever remember.
Will Laurie was a former walk-on, played for Alabama for the first national championship team. Former walk-on, number 29. You might remember him. He had a pick six, I believe it was against Penn State or one of those teams. But we just named two DBs, two wide receivers in 17 years of Alabama football under Nick Saban. So that just shows.
I think the point is made. At the end of the day, I think the point is made. All right, now let's get
Kirby Smart got some. Go ahead. Kirby's got some white guys kicking ass.
Well, he's got Dan Jackson. Hey, Dan Jackson's a hooper, though. I got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
you got Dan Jackson as a safety. He can hoop.
Yeah. And Cash Jones running that thing, getting out wide, catching the ball. So,
is it London Humphreys?
Yes,
London Humphreys.
Maybe he just has to find the right white guys.
Yes, yeah. You just got to be picky and choosy about which white guys you bring in. All right, now home team talk. You already sort of covered Jacksonville State.
Covered mine already.
I'll go ahead and get into Memphis really quick. This week, to be honest with you, I was relatively, I don't want to say full on disappointed with the performance, but it left a lot to be desired in the end of the day. When you go into a game against a team like North Alabama, you want to see absolute dominance, and I thought we saw that for the most part through the first half. The only problem you ran into is the fact that Tigers couldn't run the ball. And I know one thing to be true about Seth Hennigan as a quarterback. When you give him a 1,000-yard rusher, when you give him somebody that he can lean upon to go get tough yards, to create explosive plays in the run game, he's going to be better for it. He has had one 1,000-yard rusher in his career. That was last year with Blake Watson. And he had his highest total of touchdowns, 32 touchdowns. It's not that complicated. You have a balanced offense. That guy can go cook. I don't think that this first game was good enough, Kai. You tell me. When you look at Memphis, final rushing stats, 26 rushes for 59 yards, 2.3 average against North Alabama.
Yeah,
that does not give me a lot of hope. And they played SEMO last week. SEMO averaged 3.9 yards per carry and ran for 175. So if you're not able to outdo SEMO and their numbers, you just don't give me a lot of hope. Now, I guess if you want to create the positive spin on it, you can go, oh, well, it's FCS opponent. They didn't want to give away too many, different looks, yada, yada, yada. But no, I'm not taking that excuse. You should be able to run inside zone directly at them for 5 yards a pop. There should be no real excuse for that. But other than that, Seth Hennigan looked great. Defense looked solid, although you can't take much from it. But Chandler Martin, remember that name? If you don't remember that name already, 8 tackles, 6 solo, 2.5 tackles for loss. Elijah Herring, the new linebacker from Vol Country from Tennessee, had himself a sack. Matt Hudson from Harvard, new linebacker they have, outside linebacker, had a pick. Davion Ross, coming back off injury, had a pick. They created 3 turnovers. They held North Alabama down, didn't let them run the ball even remotely. 31 carries for 67 yards. I was impressed with the performance, but that's going to have to carry into this week against Troy, and this is going to be actually a real test. Like, Troy is not a joke around team. This is going to be the first real look, and I think this week against Troy, you'll start to see what this team actually is going to be like in conference, because a lot of the teams you'll play, it could be, like, let's just sort of go down the schedule. Whether it's, Middle Tennessee, Charlotte, North Texas, Rice, UAB, a lot of those teams will resemble a team like Troy from a talent perspective. You'll know how they can manage those games by what you see this weekend. So we'll see what it all sort of looks like. But I think they have some things that they can improve upon. They just need to go ahead and improve upon them right now. Now, we do need to get to some picks here in just a moment. I do want to get your opinion on this, though, because we get caught in a little here in Memphis. What do you call it? An echo chamber? I think we call it an echo chamber. The Florida State game here in 2 weeks after the Troy game. They have to beat Troy for anything to matter.
Right.
How should that feel now? Because, like, originally with a top 10 team, it's like, oh, free shot on the road. You lose by a little bit, you're not going to be docked for it. But, like, I've already said it, this Florida State team just feels like a below average team. And I don't think losing close is getting you anything from a committee. I don't think even winning's really earning you that much with a committee. It just it kind of has turned into a more pressurized game than I originally thought, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, 100%, man. And being a smaller school compared to Florida State, the mindset should have already been, and this is from a player, team, coach perspective, we're going to go and kick their ass. That should have been the perspective from
always, yes.
But especially seeing them play, you should have boosted confidence. The community should have boosted confidence in Memphis's ability to go get it done. And I understand, it's a big game from the playoff perspective, from the coach's perspective. You have a lot of pressure. It's added pressure, no question about that. But, man, that's what you live for as a football player, as a coach. The community maybe should taper their expectations a little bit. I would say a little bit. That'd be prudent. But the people in that building are going to be keyed up. They're going to be locked in, and they're going to go all out. And they, in my opinion, it's a ball game that they can and should win and should expect to win.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm with you. It's just it is devolved from the matchup that we thought was going to be right in front.
There's no question about that.
Team a couple of weeks ago. And the other part of it is, like, this is going to be a desperate Florida State team on 2 weeks of rest. You caught them on their bye week after losing their first 2 games of the year. So maybe they have some time to work out some of the kinks that have really killed them these first 2 weeks of the season. Now, we have some picks to make. We have locks, shocks, and a bonus pick. You go ahead and give me your lock.
My lock of the week, I'm going to go Boise State plus 19.5. I believe in that Boise State team. I believe in Ashton Jeanty if I don't believe in anybody else on that Boise State team. And I think that they'll keep it. I like that. If you're going to give me a 3-score cushion, I think that they're going to cover that score, especially from what we saw in the Idaho game. I know Oregon is going to come out more keyed up. They're going to come out more locked in. But I do believe in Ashton Jeanty's talent that much. Give me those 19.5 points. I'll take that.
How do you go 41 for 49 for 380 and 2 touchdowns, no picks, and you only win by 10? That was
I'll tell you what, it was a lot of inopportune mistakes for that offensive line. Penalties that kill drives, sacks that kill drives, and a little bit of that is on Dylan Gabriel, trusting what he sees. He still had a hell of a game, but he needs to get the ball out a little bit quicker and more explosive. There was scoring plays he left on the field. So even though he took underneath stuff, kept the offense moving, they needed those chunk plays, those explosives more. And if they're able to hit on some of those, the offense will move a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and take Kansas minus the 5.5 on the road against Illinois as my lock. Not that I think Illinois is a bad team. I think they're okay. They always have a relatively good defense. But I just like Kansas to win by a touchdown or more. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Daniels. We're talking about Devin Neal. We're talking about a very skilled offensive side of the football. I don't think they look great in week 1, but I think they are more than skilled enough to go beat an Illinois team, even on the road, by 5.5 points. You give me a touchdown, I'm going to take that every single time. Now, my shock of the week, I'm going to have to go to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State and Arkansas are renewing their rivalry after 44 freaking years. And you're going to catch Arkansas plus 7.5. So Oklahoma State's going to have to win by a couple of scores. And I know Arkansas played Pine Bluff. I get it, but they are a very, very explosively athletic team. Jaquindon Jackson, transfer from Utah, great. Taylon Green, really explosive athlete, and I thought he looked good throwing the ball against Pine Bluff. Defensively, they have a guy, Landon Jackson, that I think can get after the quarterback against Oklahoma State's offensive line. As long as Arkansas is able to sort of neutralize Ollie Gordon, we know things can fall in line for you. I'm going to take them the plus 7.5, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if they go on the road and win that game. That's a very competitive team, and I think people forget that Arkansas is as competitive as they are because of the season they had a year ago.
100%. I love that. And for my shock of the week, it's going to be Baylor plus 14 against Utah. Utah is a very, very good team, right? But they're not the fastest starters on offense. They're not the most explosive offense. I think that Baylor plus 14 is a shock. Going to be a shock to some people because they're kind of sleeping on Baylor. But I think that's a good sneaky pick there. I'm going to take Baylor plus the 14 points. That'll be my shock of the week.
And then my bonus, you can still catch it at -6. Take Nebraska -6 against the Buffs of Colorado. And the only reason I say this, I'm not even going to talk about the players. Coach Prime taking his new approach to Matt Rule, being like, I respect the guy. Last year it was all personal, and they whooped their ass on their home field. But I get the sense with Prime talking the way he is, he's not near as confident as he was a year ago. And I don't think he should be, because Dylan Raiola is the real deal. Like it's a very good quarterback that Nebraska has behind center.
I like that. And my bonus pick, I'm sticking with the Bama Crimson Tide here. And I'm going to give South Florida a little bit of love. The over in that game, 61.5. I think there will be more than 61.5 points scored. I took the over last week with Alabama, and they lived up to it and did their job. But I think home game, night game, they're going to score points. No doubt about that for Alabama. They're going to score 40 points, in my opinion. But I do think South Florida's a team with Byron Brown at quarterback that can go in there. And even if it's like cleanup duty, right, and you're in late third, fourth quarter, scoring some bonus points, I think that they'll score enough points where we'll get 61.5 over.
Yep, for sure. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Appreciate you listening out there. We'll have episode 3 coming up next Thursday, so make sure you tune in for that. It'll be dropping at noon then. We'll talk about guests from here between, now and then. But go subscribe to everything that is on Bluff City Media. We're now with the Believe Podcast Network, so you go find our entire channel with all of our great podcasts. Will be under one umbrella. So go subscribe, leave ratings, do the whole 9 yards. But we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of G5 Classified. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. To watch this episode, head over to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. We'll see you back here next week.